This webinar today. My name is Melina Saint-Louis. I'm a climate change specialist at the Office of Climate Change, Biodiversity and Environment at FAO headquarters in Rome. And I'm pleased to be here today to moderate the second online exchange forum of this series on agroecology and the nationally determined contributions organized by the BioVision Foundation, the Worldwide Fund for Nature, and the Secretariat of the Thematic Working Group on Agriculture, Food Security, and Land Use at FAO. Today's session will focus on building climate-resilient food systems based on the 10 agroecology elements, and we will have the privilege to hear from a number of speakers joining us from Asia, Africa, and Europe. In the first part of this session, we will have 3 presentations, including a short video before first Q&A. Then we will turn our attention to India and Thailand for some country experiences, which will be followed by another short Q&A session. And the third part of today's event will be a panel discussion with 3 distinguished panelists from the Democratic Republic of Congo, ICRAF Kenya, and FAO. We do have a very packed but also very interesting program. And to ensure that we also have time to address some questions from the audience, I would like to remind all speakers to please respect the time that was assigned to you for your presentation. If you do go over time, I will politely interrupt you and ask that you wrap up your presentation so we can move on with our program. I invite all participants to also write their questions in the chat box throughout the session. You may indicate which speaker you are addressing your question to, as well as write your questions in English, French, or Spanish. And we may not be able to answer all of the questions today, but we will be preparing a short session report in which we will address those additional questions. So please don't hesitate to use the chat function. I would like to remind also all of our participants online to please keep your microphone muted for the duration of the webinar when you're not speaking. I would now like to welcome our first speaker, Mr. Emile Frison, who's a member of the International Panel of Experts on Sustainable Food Systems. Mr. Frison's research focuses on advancing sustainable agriculture and food systems, and today he will discuss the relevance of the food systems approach based on agroecology elements to increase climate resilience. Emile, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I am going to make a short presentation starting from the point that our current food systems are not sustainable. They are responsible for 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions. The current food systems are vulnerable to climate change and need to adapt. But fortunately, we also know that agriculture and food systems have the capacity to adapt to and mitigate climate change through agroecology. In the last couple of years, we've seen an impressive number of major reports recognizing the need for transformational change, not just incremental improvements of our current system, but we need to rethink, including the IPCC report on climate change and land of 2019, and whether we start from unsustainable or industrial agriculture or from underperforming subsistence agriculture, we need to move towards diversified agroecological farming that is resilient and sustainable. FAO has been developing not a definition of agroecology, but rather a set of 10 elements that characterize agroecology, starting from diversity, resilience, synergies, efficiency, recycling. An important element is co-creation and sharing of knowledge, taking also human and social values into consideration, and culture and food transitions, and all of that within the context of circular and solidarity economy and responsible governance. Agroecology is not just a set of agricultural practices or innovations like climate smart agriculture or precision agriculture. It is a different paradigm. It takes all the best practices that are compatible with the 10 elements of agroecology, combines it with traditional and farmer knowledge through co-innovation. Agroecology is therefore not just one tool in a general toolbox, as is often stated. It is about a different toolbox. And it's a different paradigm that allows us not only to address climate mitigation and adaptation, but at the same time, be economically performant, address environmental, health, social, and cultural objectives. We have now enough information to confirm that total productivity of diversified agroecological systems are equally performant to conventional agriculture, that From an income point of view, they perform better, but particularly important is the increased resilience and stability, which shows really that agroecology can achieve food security while addressing the climate challenges. I'm not going to go through the details, but in Europe, as well as in developing countries, we've seen better economic performance and also the scalability with large numbers of farmers having adopted agroecology, like in zero budget natural farming in Andhra Pradesh, where they aim to really generalize this practice throughout the state. Also, from an environmental point of view and climate point of view, agroecology has the capacity to put carbon in the soil and in the vegetation, turning agriculture into a solution. It boosts biodiversity, restores degraded land, and improves ecosystem services. So from an adaptation point of view, the climate IPCC report really recognizes the important role that agroecological practices provide as a solution to climate problems, as does the report on Global Commission on Adaptation that comes to the same conclusion. So why are we not seeing a more rapid move towards agroecology? Well, there are a number of obstacles, and in an IPES food report of 2016, we call them lock-ins. I don't have time to go through them. I just want to mention one that is often not talked about, and that's the incredible concentration of power of agri-food industry, with just a handful of companies controlling the vast majority of the seed, fertilizer, pesticide input markets, and gives them a tremendous power to influence policies. Unfortunately, a lot of things are happening and the transition is already underway. And we have more and more case studies that are demonstrating how this can contribute to these multiple solutions. But we need to combine changes in production practices with changes in social and economic relations, changes in knowledge generation and transmission, and changes in institutional frameworks. And that's all part of agroecology. So to conclude, whether we start from underperforming subsistence agriculture or from unsustainable industrial agriculture, we really must converge towards diversified agroecological farming, taking the 10 elements of agroecology as guidance. And what we want to avoid, and unfortunately is still happening, is that underperforming subsistence agriculture is pushed towards adopting industrial agriculture practices that are not sustainable. So with that introduction, I thank you, and I hope you will have a good discussion.
Thank you so much, Emil, for your presentation. Very interesting, and also for setting the scene for today's discussion. I would like now to turn to Mr. Martin Heron, who's a Program Manager of Policy and Advocacy at the BioVision Foundation. Martin will tell us a bit more about the potential of agroecology to build climate-resilient livelihoods and food systems. Martin, over to you.
Well, thank you, Mylena. And basically, to follow up on the introduction by Emil, we would just like to kick off this session by screening a short video that summarizes the findings of a comprehensive study conducted by FAO and BioVision about the potential of agroecology to build climate-resilient food systems and the livelihoods within there. So the video also elaborates just very briefly on how to conceptualize the term climate resilience in the context of agroecology. And here we go.
Despite significant technological advances in modern agriculture, people are still going hungry. Climate change is further threatening food security and taking a dramatic toll on our already dwindling natural resources and biodiversity. We must ensure our food systems continue to nourish us in the long run, while also reducing greenhouse gas emissions. To achieve that, we need to make them more resilient and sustainable. Resilience determines how robust food systems are to changing conditions and external shocks. It is an interplay of social, ecologic, and economic aspects. Food system resilience is defined according to 13 indicators that range from diversity and connectivity to reflection, shared learning, and economic profitability. Since we can only achieve resilience systematically, any missing component weakens it. Based on a comprehensive analysis of scientific studies and 2 case studies in Kenya and Senegal, our report shows how agroecology, as defined by FAO's 10 elements, strengthens resilience and supports a low emissions pathway. The results show that 3 components stand out in agroecology's resilience-enhancing potential. Agroecology also builds healthy and fertile soils, for instance, by closing natural resource cycles, ensuring synergies between plants and animals, and reducing the need for pesticide use. It puts people and knowledge at the centre and focuses on local solutions, integrating traditions and heritage and strengthening farmers' networks. The evidence is clear. Agroecology can contribute significantly to climate-proofing our food systems. But it can only succeed when all stakeholders also understand the relevance of the socio-economic dimension and value it accordingly. Our report underscores the existing potential for a climate-resilient transformation of the food system based on agroecology principles. Let's make change happen together.
Was visible, and I think it really just builds on what Emil just elaborated on. The findings from this study is clear. There is indication for agroecology to strengthen climate resilience, at least on the production side. But we also found that there's considerable weaknesses in the uptake of these socio-economic aspects of agroecology, despite their considerable climate resilience building potential they have. So this is why in this session, we need to talk about the broader food systems and how this approach can also be included in national plans and strategies, such as the NDCs. And this basically leads me to the next speaker, Ingrid Schulte, that will elaborate a little bit more on this. Ingrid is a senior land use consultant at Climate Focus and will speak about her recent study on food systems and the NDCs. So Ingrid, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you, Martin. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, great. So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. As Martin mentioned, I'll just speak today a little bit about a recent publication called Enhancing NDCs for Food System that was launched last month by our team at Climate Focus together with colleagues at WWF, UN Environment, and EAT. So this publication basically takes the form of a guidance paper, and our objective here was really to provide recommendations for policymakers to increase the ambition of their NDCs by leveraging the climate mitigation and adaptation potential of a transition to sustainable food systems. And here we really take a holistic view. Of course, agroecological production is one part of this. And in this paper, we do this by first presenting the opportunities and then providing some concrete examples to illustrate how these opportunities can be captured by strengthening national policies, targets, and so on, as Martin mentioned. We do this by identifying 16 ways policymakers can take more action, which are really meant to be a starting point for discussion. So I will note that the report is quite comprehensive and covers many of the important points, but this is by no means an exhaustive list of activities. As you can see here, a large motivation for the paper was due to the fact that the mitigation potential associated with food systems generally, and in particular, the potential to contribute to NDCs is under-realized. If we look at the numbers, as Emil mentioned in his presentation, food systems are responsible for about 1/3 of global emissions. And so it's clear that there's significant opportunity to reduce emissions all along the global food systems. At the same time, this is not reflected in many NDCs. So some countries touch on the agriculture sector in their NDCs, but very few mention specific activities. And reference to food loss and waste and shifting diets in NDCs remains limited and largely untapped. Just to provide a bit more detail on the paper, we include a high-level checklist of measures that can be considered at various stages of the food system. So for example, at the production stage, this includes things like promoting activities that avoid further natural habitat destruction, considering principles of sustainable agriculture, again, including agroecological approaches, investing in efficiency measures and technological developments. Some examples at the transport and processing stage are things like improving supply chain infrastructure and local supply chain management. And at the consumption stage, raising awareness to promote healthy and sustainable diets and working with the retail and consumer sectors to reduce food loss and waste at those levels. In addition, for each of the 16 high-level actions we present, we basically provide a one-page summary of select details on the emissions, mitigation potential, adaptation impacts, and co-benefits, including SDG linkages. So for example, SDG 12 to eradicate hunger by supporting a resilient food system, or SDG 15, the protection, restoration, and sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems. And so here on the right, you can just see what one of those pages looks like. And these guiding questions are really designed for policymakers to be able to reflect on what activities are appropriate for their countries, recognizing that there may be different considerations for each context. That being said, there are actions that every country can take to further address emissions from food systems, again, including agroecological productions. And the 2021 NDC resubmission just presents the opportunity to further include these. And this can, again, be highlighted. If we look at the 15 NDCs already submitted, this was just a quick analysis. If you look at the second to last blue line in this figure on the left, there's only one NDC so far that mentions the keywords agroecology. So there's still plenty of room for enhancement here. So I'll stop here for now, but again, I certainly encourage you to read the report, and you can also contact me if you have any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ingrid, for your insightful presentation on how we can use the 2020 NDC enhancement process to really promote the transformation of our food systems. We do have a few minutes now to answer any burning questions from the audience. I'm just going to check now if we do not currently have any questions in the chat, I believe. I would like to remind all participants, though, that you are more than welcome to post your questions in the chat box. And you may indicate once again which speaker you would like to address your question to, and feel free to pose your question in ideally the language of your choice, but ideally French, English, or Spanish. So if there are no questions right now, I think we will move on to the next speaker. And actually, sorry, I see here from Delphine, Delphine who has a question. Would you?
Yes, sorry, maybe it's easier if I speak. Can you hear me?
Absolutely, go ahead.
Well, I was wondering, I'm interested about this issue of engaging with the big corporations. So maybe the question for the first speaker, but how can we get the big corporation to support agroecological strategies, I guess? So what could be the strategy, or I would like to hear more from maybe the first speaker.
Thank you for your question, Delphine. Emile, would you like to answer the question?
I think Emil had to leave already. Right?
Okay, I'm sorry. That,
but maybe the other speakers can also answer.
Well, perhaps just briefly, of course, there are different ways how you can address this imbalance we have currently in the food system with these big players. Either you can show what alternative works. You can try to work together with them. You know, there's the big debate on the Food System Summit next year, where these actors will be present as well. And either you can go into a dialogue there, or try to convince them of a different business model. But obviously, this requires a dialogue and open ears. And in the past, yeah, the relation has been obviously very difficult. So there is no silver bullet to that. Just my personal view would be, as long as we all work on our own and don't try to reach out to others, or at least join forces also to have a bigger bigger voice or an alliance in this narrative that will be discussed at the Food System Summit next year. It will be very difficult to make any change in the food systems as we have it so far, even if we have good examples on the ground, but we need to scale them. For those, we also need bigger players like state actors, yeah, and evidence from science.
Thank you so much, Martin. I'm not sure if anyone else wanted to add on this question. If not for now, we do have another question in the chat that came from Fergus. The question is for Ingrid. So I'll just read it out loud. I'm aware that both Vietnam and Myanmar have agroforestry in their revised NDCs, often a form of agroecology. Maybe you need a wider set of search terms to get a fuller picture.
Yes, I think that's a great point, and I absolutely agree with that. So for this analysis, it was mainly just a quick keyword search, but certainly for a more in-depth analysis, there would need to be a bit of thinking on, you know, what is actually included and what other aspects might be covered here that we would want to search for.
Great, thank you so much, Ingrid, for clarifying this. So we don't have other questions. I think we're doing really good with time. So we're going to move to the next presenter, and we will have another Q&A session in approximately 15 minutes. So once again, please feel free to pose additional questions in the chat in the meantime. And it is now my pleasure to introduce Professor Rajeshwar Singh Chandel, who's Executive Director of the State Project Implementing Unit within the government of Himachal Pradesh in India. Professor Chandel, the floor is yours.
So, good afternoon from Himachal, and good morning and good evening to all participants. And thanks, my humble, sincere thanks to the FAO, to Biovision and WWF to give this opportunity to speak from this wider platform. So before showing my further slides, let me show this photograph. This is the millets growing. Our farmers are growing in Himachal Pradesh. So now to move further, yes, this slide is with everybody. How 10 principle of agroecology we need to match with our agroecological systems, what we are doing, what we are practicing. So whatsoever technology we are using here is SPNF, Subhash Palekar natural farming, and people also know it as a zero budget natural farming. So it has 4 basic principles: Jivamrit, Achhadan, Vapsa, and Bijamrit, and you can see on your screen the English translation of this terminology. So how this Bijamrit, it is mapping with efficiency and resilience Similarly, Jivamrit, this is the main source of this, the fertility enhancement culture. So this maps recycling, efficiency, and at the same time resilience. So this is the main decoction which ultimately gives resilience to the farming system. Another is Achadhan and Vapsa. These both, they map all three other: diversity, efficiency, recycling, and resilience. So as a matter of fact, we at this point of time is now focusing on these 5 principles of agroecology at this production level. Now, our next issue is just to, on the strength of these 5 principles, to build a complete food system, to create a universe which will match other principles, other 5 principles of the agroecology. Here, if you see at this slide, we have now this program of the state government of Himachal Pradesh. This is PK3Y, that is Prakrtik Kheti Khushhal Kisan Yojana. And if I translate it, this is Natural Farming Prosperous Farmer Program. This is one of the flagship program of our state. And now we have a big production base. We have over 80,000 farmers who have converted to the natural farming. But at the same time, our target is to convert all 900,000 farmers of the state to the natural farming system. So for that, we need big data analytics. Then we have to converse this our program with the national programs, and we have to map the SDGs. And at the same time, we are also building supply value chains and market linkage. But the base behind all this structure is, because presently we have only this production base, and we are working to complete all this structural, we will add all these structures and mapping the different SDGs, but based on transparency and the reverse traceability from the market to the production base. Here, let me make it very clear that we will not start it from zero. Now we have a enabling sustainable food system. This is a new guiding book which is recently released by the FAO and INRA. So they have included the success stories of more than 20 countries. And interestingly, which is a fortunate part on us, is that Himachal Pradesh has also been included as one of the story in that book. So this guiding book, it gives a 360-degree view of the food system, and it gets best fit in within our natural farming system of Himachal Pradesh. So it's not only the building the production system and just going to develop a wider umbrella, wider wings of the sustainable food system. We are also matching INDCs, and among INDCs declarations, the 2 important declarations, that is sustainable and climate resilient agriculture and biodiversity and Himalayan ecosystem. This is the one of the main focuses we are pinning at this point through this program of Himachal Pradesh. Similarly, we are also looking at HLP declarations, SDGs, and UNCCT's declarations. We are also pinning on all those issues. And in Himachal Pradesh, through this Palekar methodology and through this scheme, Prosperous Natural Farming and Prosperous Farmer Scheme, the main objective is to make Himachal Atmanirbhar. This Atmanirbhar is to make Himachal self-sufficient. So through this scheme, we are mapping SDG 1, 2, 6, 8, 9, 12, and 15. We are focusing on agro-diversity through sustainable crop intensification. We are focusing on protecting Himalayan ecosystem, water conservation, and at the same time, land restoration, soil health, and socio-economic well-being of the farmers. This is one of the main priority we are looking at. Here, just you look at the current statistics. We are covering whole of the Himachal Pradesh. We have now over 80,000 farmers who have converted to the natural farming. But if you look at the area, that the area could be small, but we are focusing on the small and marginal farmers, because our small farmers, the average land holding is less than 0.6 hectare. So with the due course of time, this area will also definitely be increased. So here, one of the video, I will not show it right now, but here farmer will show. You can look it after the end of this session, that how our farmer is looking at agroecology. He has nutri-cereals, he has millets, pseudo-cereals, nutritional beets, mountain folk rice varieties, wild forage crop, and number of biodiverse crops he has on his own farm. This is the view, how we are viewing natural farming in Himachal Pradesh. Here we have developed small markets by the farmers at their own, but these are the disorganized markets. So by creating the sustainable food system, we are looking at creating a sustainable food system by providing a stable, organized market structure to these farmers. So to show a big picture, now we have a big production base. Now we are creating FPOs and organized markets through developing different IT platforms, and we are planning to have our big dashboard where the policymaker can look at the different aspects of this complete food system, which will be linked, correlated with the consumer and the entrepreneurs. So thank you very much. I think I have matched the timeline, and I welcome the questions.
That's great. Thank you so much, Professor Chandel, for sharing the experience of Himachal Pradesh and really highlighting how agroecology is being applied to improve the food systems in a holistic manner. So we are staying in Asia now, but moving to Thailand to hear from Mr. Plai Pairam, who's project manager of sustainable consumption and production at the Worldwide Fund for Nature in Bangkok. Plai, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. My name is Plai. It's my pleasure to be here to share with you some of my experience working with family farmers based on the project funded by IKI. From the 2017, we have initiated a project, a nature-based solution for ecosystem restoration and to build resilient communities called FLR 349, which has been piloted in the northern of Thailand. Here how the story begins. The picture on the left represents a common scene of deforestation in steep headwater area of monoculture agriculture. This can be witnessed all over the northern part of Thailand. Maize plantations are the first key driver of deforestation in Thailand. From the past decades, maize has become an important cash crop for the animal feed industries among smallholder family farmers. The picture on the right shows some of the progress of our project FLR 349 after 2 years of working with smallholder farmers, converting degraded land back into forest through an agroecology approach. This diagram depicts the vicious cycle causing the decline in climate resilience in smallholder family farmers. It started in these watershed landscapes. They were originally forest cover. Since this type of land does not allow farmers to legally have ownership, farmers tend to grow monoculture crops instead of keeping the forest and diversity on their land. And also another driver is the increasing demands for commercial crops and meat over the past 2 decades. Maize plantation pose serious impacts on ecosystem deforestation. The intensive agrochemical practices have caused soil degradation, drought, decline of biodiversity, and impacts on agricultural productivity. The production relies heavily on agricultural inputs owned by agribusiness, leaving only small margins for the farmer. This has led to the crumbling of local economy. Most farmers are trapped in debt cycle and lose their ability to be self-reliant. It is clear that climate impacts have threatened food security. There has been less rainfall, impacts on food production, and water scarcity becomes more evident. We are facing more forest fire each year due to slash and burn practice and exacerbated by climate change. Therefore, smallholder farmers are becoming vulnerable and they are not prepared for the climate impacts. So we have established an initiative called FLR 349, stands for 3 forests, 4 benefits, under the self-sufficiency economy philosophy of His Majesty the King Bhumibol Adulyadej, which is King Rama IX. That's why it's number 9, 349. This diagram shows the plantation model regarded as agroecology. Farmers learn to grow perennial trees, fruit trees, vegetables, and herbs in the mixed systems. Numbers of nature-based solutions have been adopted for FLR, such as mix different perennial crops that will support and or complement each other, use of microbe, compost, and organic material cover to restore soil health, land adjustment, making of swales, topsoil erosion, retain water, use of banana and vetiver glass to keep water and maintain soil health. Water storage, small reservoir. This plantation function like carbon sinks, conserve water, restore biodiversity, which make possible high productivity throughout the year under the climate change situation. The model is done through deploying agroecology approach. Its activities focus on diversity, synergies, efficiency, resilience, and social values. Different interventions are provided to smallholder family farmers to encourage them to turn their monoculture agriculture operations into a sustainable agricultural system, which helps to restore the environment. These include financial incentives to give up monoculture and grow different perennial crops instead, capacity building and training in sustainable agriculture, land adjustment and irrigation, the development of value chain and marketplace for products from projects landscape. Farmers can be confident that the outputs from their land will have buyers offering good prices, helping them earn more. This agroecology model can help to generate 40% more for farm income for farmers compared to the income from monocropping. The income stream from mixed crops are derived from daily income from vegetable herbs and monthly or seasonal income from fruits, and long-term income, yearly income could be from forestries which are assets on the land. The research also found that FLR 349 model could potentially generate at least total carbon stock of 210 tons per hectare within the 10 years, comparing to monocrop plantation that at least release 4 tons of carbon per hectare per annual crop. Therefore, this model is contributing to national greenhouse gas mitigation strategy in agriculture, as well as forest restoration attempts. This shows how agroecology approach is both climate adaptation and mitigation. As the model has been exercised, we could see an increase in adaptive capacity and climate change. Risks are mitigated through agroecology. Farmers are also more prepared and have become more self-sufficient. At the end, they are becoming more resilient to climate impacts. These two pictures were taken from the FLR 349 landscapes. They are proudly showing off their organically grown vegetable. 20% of the land in the project are used to grow food crops like vegetable, which is used for food, their own food, and a source of regular income. On the right picture, bananas are one of the first crops that have to be planted parallel to the deforestation, as they help moisturize the land. Here is my last slide. I would like to conclude with some key lessons learned based on the project. We have witnessed that most smallholder family farmers are not prepared and are most vulnerable to climate impacts, but their primary concerns are the economic issues. Monoculture farming that has been mainstream agricultural production method for decades. It is a key driving force of poverty in smallholder farmers, deforestation, and degraded ecosystem, affecting their resilience. Agroecology plays a crucial role in mitigation impacts and could replace monoculture farming. With no impacts on food production, it helps farmers become more resilient and providing better economic benefits. Compared to the industrial counterparts with agroecology approach, smallholder family farmers prove to be better at protecting biodiversity, more inclusive and more productive per unit of land. Last but not least, family farmers are powerful agents of change in achieving SDGs. So here are the links to all of the work that we have done so far. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Fly, for highlighting examples and lessons learned from Thailand's experience in building climate resilient value chains. I see now that our presentations have sparked lots of reflections and questions from our participants. So we will move on to a short Q&A now for about 10 minutes. And I would like to start with a question that came from Sudhir. Do you think that there are more risks than benefits of looking at agro ecosystem through sustainable intensification lens? It is not specified whose speaker the question is addressed to, so I will open it now to our speakers who are still online for any insights on that question.
Can I speak from Himachal?
Please go ahead.
Yes, our experience shows that risks are being mitigated by the various agroecological techniques. And the past 2 years studies, they indicate that we could be able to enhance 24% yield in 2 years, not yield, but income of the farmers by adopting this zero budget national farming in Himachal Pradesh. And the another most important component was the reduction in cost of cultivation. We could be able to reduce 43% cost of cultivation by adopting this agroecological SPNF in Himachal Pradesh.
Thank you so much, Professor. Do we have anyone else who wanted to react on this question? Not for now. Okay. In this case, I will move on to the next question that came from Leslie, who is.
If you allow me, if I can add on that, this is Sudhir who asked the question. I work for IRI, International Research Institute. My submission is that we need to look much beyond yield and income when we talk about agroecology and ecosystem. If we will keep stuck with yield and income, we will not able to achieve what we are thinking in terms of this agroecological concept. So I think the world need to really move beyond yield and income. That was the point of asking this question. Thank you.
I can respond on this. Yes, Sudhir, this is a very right answer from your side. We are not looking only on the production and productivity side, but unless you make convince the farmer that shifting to agroecological practices will not reduce their yield initially, because farmers' point of view is not only on the other ecological factors, on the environment, climate factors. His first and foremost issue is whether he's getting more income or not. So we have also to focus initially while we convince a farmer to shift from the conventional method of farming to the agroecological methods. That okay, it's not only he's just adding to the this climatic this resilience to the agroecosystem, but at the same time there is no risk of losing the income, losing production, etc., etc. So yes, it's good reply from you. Thank you.
Thank you so much from both of you for your inputs on this question. So now moving on to the next question from Leslie, who is addressing it to all speakers. She would like to know if the speakers could share their views on what are the policy requirements in promoting sustainable value chains, both at national and international levels, and what policymakers should be advocating for.
Maybe I can try answer that based on the experience, the project that I have been working. So we see that the incentive or economic measures as a policy are most important and crucial. Farmers could receive additional funding on the use of alternative land preparation methods. The price for sustainable food products shall be subsidized. Agrochemicals, which have impacts on health and environment, should be taxed to discourage the use of crops production, and viable economic measures to increase local market channels and retail business units for sustainable produce, alongside the establishment of regulations, standards, and certification will help the market transformation. I think this also addresses the next following question as well.
Thank you, Plai. Do we have inputs from other speakers on this question? Or Leslie, also, if you want to add something and turn on your microphone, you're welcome to do so.
No, thank you for Mr. Plai insight. Was very interesting and useful for me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. So we now have another question that came from Anil Rana. I don't know if Anil, you are online, you want to ask your question, or otherwise I can read it as well.
Yes. This question is addressed to Professor Rajeshwar. Sir, I am from Himachal Pradesh itself, from district Una, and I've been practicing Subhash Palekar natural farming technique for the last 5 years. Yes, there has been a marked increase in the production as compared to the traditional farming that was being done initially using chemicals and all. Even the quality of the food product is very good, no doubt about that. The only problem is when we go out to sell it in the market, it is like the farmer is not getting the right rate for the quality produce that he or she is producing. So what is the government, what are the steps that the government is taking to improving the marketability of these products?
Thank you, Anil, for connecting with us on this bigger platform. You see, it is amazing to everybody to hear that government of Himachal Pradesh is proactive, not active, but proactive in finding out the solution. What I spoke as a speaker on sustainable food system. So it's not what I spoke over here. We are planning to create a prototype of sustainable food system, which will connect the produce from the farmer's field to the consumer's plate. So we are going now to, it has been planned. We are going to now create this platform from this capital of Himachal Pradesh. And once we succeed, then we will replicate in the rest of the state. And
it's looking forward to it. This is needed.
This, as per the guidelines, as per the expectation of the FAO. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you both. We have a couple of minutes left maybe for one last question. There's a question in the chat that came from Michael Hauser. Michael, would you like to take the floor?
Yeah, thanks a lot. And hi, everyone. Well, this is a question for Professor Rajeshwar. In the beginning of your presentation, you shared a slide showing millets, which I find great. I work for EcoSat, and that's one of our mandate crops. But what tangible linkages do you actually have with EcoSat in Hyderabad, and how can EcoSat's crop improvement agenda, the research agenda, support SPNF and the work you're doing, and agroecology in particular?
Yes, thank you very much for this very important query, and we would be very happy to connect with you.
Right, but do you have any kind of first set of things you want EcoSat to do?
Yeah, because presently we have lost many farmers who were mastered in this millets, pseudo cereals cultivation. Now with the problem of the market, slowly they shift to the other kind of the production system. But now it's our main focus this year further to enhance the number of farmers. So how we can focus on the seed, who can provide us the good seed, quality seed, elite material, elite planting material, and the variety of the millets which we can grow, which we can intervene in our overall farming system. So we would welcome from EcoSat and any kind of the national international agency. We would welcome, sir.
Thank you so much. So now I believe we will move on to the next part of our session. I would like to thank all the speakers, all the participants, also for your questions and for raising some very interesting, very important elements. So I will now hand it over to Ms. Martina Fleckenstein from the Worldwide Fund for Nature in Germany, and she will be moderating the panel discussion over the next 30 minutes. So Martina, over to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Marlena, and a warm welcome also from my side. I'm with WWF International, our global food program, and I'm very happy to moderate this panel. We have three excellent panelists here, and I would like to start with Tosi Mampanu. Tosi is the ambassador and lead negotiator for the Climate Convention, and he has attended all climate conferences since 2007, so really an expert on that. And he's also the vice chair for the UN Food System Summit in the action track on nature positive production, which is, by the way, shared also by our global food practice lead from WWF. Tosi, my question is, based on your long experience in the Climate Convention and based on the presentation we heard today, that there is still a gap in integrating food system approaches into the upcoming and new revised NDCs. Do you have any recommendations how we could better connect and enhance the integration of food system approaches and especially resilient food systems into the upcoming climate negotiations and maybe the new or revised NDCs?
Thank you very much, Martina. A pleasure to be hosted by you and Marlena for this very insightful conversation.
Could you go a little bit, the mic, you're a little bit facing in and facing out with the voice. So maybe just check again, sorry.
Okay. Can you hear me? Maybe it's the connection.
Yeah, it's better now.
Okay, I just wanted to thank you for inviting me to this very insightful conversation. I need to start by setting a little bit of context by saying that the topic of food systems has been prevalent in the UNFCCC process since the early days of the convention. It is part of the very objective of the convention in Article 2 to ensure that food production is not threatened by climate change. Parties have also agreed in 1994 to cooperate in preparing for adaptation to the impact of climate change, including, of course, the agriculture sector. And since then, a lot has happened. There are, for example, many work streams related to climate finance, technology transfer, and capacity building under the UNFCCC that can be used to build a more resilient agricultural system. At the same time, the complexity of the challenge has increased due to the higher demand for food, more diverse food supply chains, change agricultural practices, more efficient communication and information flows, and not least also due to the impacts of climate change on agricultural production. All of this creates, of course, a wide menu of options for parties to choose from. And I see the NDCs as a tool that countries can use in their effort to coordinate different approaches. In doing so, Martina, countries will have different needs to transform to resilient food systems. Different adaptation approaches will be used by different parties depending on their agriculture system. And to make a long story short, I see two priorities here. First, we must ensure food security. Fresh, healthy, and nutritious food is important for every human being on this planet, and it is our responsibility to work on ensuring this. A world free of hunger is our imperative, as it is to all countries that have subscribed to the Sustainable Development goals. Second, we must reduce food loss and food waste. Climate change impacts, pests and diseases that destroy harvest need to be brought under control. Transport and storage infrastructure must ensure that good food doesn't go to waste. We can afford to waste good food, and it is time to change how we produce and consume to reduce the more than 1 billion tons of food that is wasted every year. And maybe I will add one last point, which is very important to me. I happen to be a board member of a specialized agency of the African Union, which is called African Risk Capacity, that provides climate insurance to governments so that they can protect the agricultural sector. And this is very important because it allows government to hedge possible losses that can hinder years of continuous growth in the agricultural sector. So countries, like I said, need to be creative and find specific tools so that they can ensure resilience. Thank you, Tina.
Thank you, Josie, and thank you also for really pointing out the three issues like food security, fresh, healthy and nutritious food. Also, I think to bring on the topic the reduction of food loss and waste, which is very important, and especially on transport and storage. And I think it's really worthwhile also to think about the third point on climate insurance and risk minimization. I would like to hand over now or come over to the second panelist, Fergus Sinclair. Fergus is leading system science at ECRAF. He was the project leader of the UN Committee on Food Security, the high-level panel of expert report on agroecology, and lead author of a background paper on agroecology approaches. So an expert on the topic we are discussing today. And Fergus, my question to you is, we talked about resilient food systems. Maybe you could point out the characteristics at national level. So do you have concrete examples and maybe suggestions how countries could really implement resilient food systems? Especially also listening or coming back to Bly's presentation on the economic aspect, that farmers need to have a benefit by going in this direction. So happy to listen to your thoughts on that.
Thank you very much. I've been fascinated listening to the really rich examples from India and Thailand. And I'm just going to share the screen because I think if I can, let me see whether this works.
It should be possible that you could share screen.
Yes, are you seeing something?
Only, no, not the full slide. Just, it's not uploading. Now, yes.
Let me try.
And now it's fine. We see the full screen.
It tells me I'm sharing, but you can't see it.
Now we see it now. It's okay. We see one slide.
Okay, lovely. So I wonderful. So
Fergus, we can't hear you very well. So
excellent. So the reason I wanted to show this is because it's very clear from what we've been hearing, right from Emil's initial.
Fergus, the problem is we can't hear you very well. maybe due to the sharing this slide.
Way through the examples in India and Thailand.
It looks like we lost.
You're having trouble hearing? Is that any better?
Maybe you have to switch off the video because it's very hard to hear you.
I'm speaking as loud as I can.
I think it's the connection.
In that case, that's better now.
Go ahead. Now we lost you. Okay. So Focus is based in Kenya. Okay.
Sorry, I've switched my internet connection so that it's now going through my phone. Hopefully that will be better.
Yeah, it's better, much more better. Thank you for switching the connection.
Okay, let me then pick up. So what I was saying is right the way from Emil's talk through the very rich examples in India and Thailand, I think we can see that there are a number of critical reasons why agroecology is not more widespread, despite the clear benefits that it has for climate resilience. And I'd like to focus on three of these elements. So the first is market failures. And that's something that was very clear, you know, in the Thai example in relation to the fact that smallholders are very concerned about the economics. Quite often debt is driving people away from monocultures, but they might not be able to realize the economic benefits. And that's something that we saw in the Indian example as well. And that's because you have maladapted policies that may skew the market. So there may be subsidies for inorganic fertilizer, for example, that there may be various legislation that makes it difficult for people to benefit from some of the biodiversity introduced into agriculture, particularly trees, for example. There was a recent shift in India with a national agroforestry policy that opened up benefits from native trees on farms. So this combination of market failures, and this depends, of course, on consumer choice and the extent to which people can exert agency throughout the food system in order to put a higher value on products that have come from natural farming. And of course, that then gives us what are the mechanisms that you need in order to do that. And quite often it comes down to trust. And in Thailand a few years ago, we did some really interesting work on sustainable vegetable production around Chiang Mai. And it was clear that you could get very good trust between consumers and producers in relation to safe vegetables because people trusted that farmers had followed guidelines. In some other contexts, for example, near Nanjing in China, it was very difficult to develop that trust. So the concept of participatory guarantee systems and ways of being able to build trust within around natural farming products, agroecological products, so that they can get that higher market value is really important. And finally, there's this really important issue of both vertical and horizontal integration. And this is where policy really needs to move. Agroecology requires intersectoral cooperation, but it's very difficult to get it. Often, you know, forestry is in a different ministry from agriculture, energy is somewhere else. If you're trying to look at circular economy, if you're trying to pull things together, you need to get environment, energy, agriculture, forestry, livestock, all integrated in order to meet the agroecological principles. And that quite often requires special interministerial cooperation, certain powers. In some cases, it's been prime ministerial orders. In India, Niti Aayog, the think tank chaired by the Prime Minister, has recently adopted natural farming and agroecology quite strongly as a modern approach to addressing India's food system challenges, with the HLP report as being a solid basis for that. And that's a really great step forward. And the last thing about vertical integration is that quite often there's a missing middle. There are commitments at international levels, at national levels, but they don't get translated into action on the ground because we've got the intermediary scale levels, and particularly there is often no policy structures or social capital at the local landscape scale. 10 to 1,000 square kilometers, the landscape level at which ecosystem services first manifest and can be managed. And without an ability to act at that scale, to look at synergies and trade-offs between how land use affects different ecosystem services, it's very, very difficult to manage agroecological transition. So those would be the three critical things that I think we need to work on in terms of concrete policy measures. Thank you.
Thanks, Fergus. I think just to reiterate, I think this building trust in the vertical and horizontal cooperation, I think that's something really we need to have a deeper dive in. And as you mentioned, we have still this silo thinking, at the global level, but also at the regional level. And especially very important is how to bring the actions on the ground. And before I hand over to Edmundo, maybe I could bring in Blai again. Blai, are you still in the call? I don't know. I don't know if he's in, but we, especially in the project in Chiang Mai, we already tried to build. Blai, could you maybe elaborate before I get to the next panelist? In your project in Chiang Mai, I think what you have done, you have set up this regional implementation with a supermarket. So maybe you could add 2 or 3 sentences on this, how important it is to have this regional connection.
Yes, yes. As I presented, market is the most important element to convince smallholder farmers to transform their agriculture into sustainable. And in order to do that, not only we provide incentive to them to take care of the plants, but market is very important. So therefore, we have invited one of the largest retail company in Thailand, a Central Group, to the project, and then we show them that they need a market for their produce. And then this retail company, they agree, and then they like the project, and then we have established an MOU together that all the products that is coming from the FLR, forest landscape restoration, will be able to sell in the retail sector, in their retail stores. But anyway, we are not actually trying to only make a market for them in the national scale, but we focus on local food system. So in addition to connecting to the retail sector, we also make a market called farmers market, making small markets in their local, area, in order for them to sell their products first, and the excess, if they are able to produce more products, then they can sell to the retail.
Okay, thank you. So that all once again emphasize, especially now with the COVID situation, to have really this short supply chain. Now I would like to come to our third panelist, Edmund Barrioso from the FAO. He's an expert on soil, on biodiversity, ecosystem management, and supporting agroecology transition since years. He was leading the FAO agroecology team in the development of the 10 elements, followed up recently by a peer-reviewed publication in 2020. Great to have you in our panel, Edmundo. I would like to get a little bit more insight based on your experiments in the implementation of these 10 elements, and also looking beyond just the production angle. So what are the other co-benefits we have if we talk about agroecology elements? Over to you. You are on mute. You have to unmute yourself, please.
Thank you for the introduction, Martina, and I'm glad to be part of this interesting forum. It's been interesting that a number of issues have already been raised through the whole during the previous presentations and interventions, and basically it's key to that the difficulty of transforming agriculture and food systems in a way that responds to both local and national expectations and desires, as well as global commitments, is a major constraint to real transformative change. It has been called upon by many recent global reports. Recognizing the inherent complexity, that inherent complexity is commonly seen as a deterrent to action, FAO has approved the 10 elements of agroecology as an analytical framework to support the design of differentiated paths for agriculture and food systems transformation. By providing a simplified yet holistic version of reality, the 10 elements framework can facilitate decision-making by policymakers, practitioners, and other stakeholders towards enhancing resilience at different scales. The 10 elements framework highlights 4 promising entry points, namely biodiversity, consumers, education, and governance, to build a structured process to succinctly link the 10 elements to the stepwise design of prospective agroecological transitions. Nexus approaches are used to highlight and examine salient interactions among different sectors and entry points, so addressing a bit the issue of silo thinking. Prior to developing visual narratives using the 10 elements of agroecology icons to describe plausible theories of transformative change towards sustainable food systems. The biodiversity, nutrition, and climate change nexus highlights that diversification is central to facing climate change as well as nutrition challenges. Diversity of activities and livelihoods options within food systems is a fundamental adaptive trait, particularly in the context of climate change. Increased tree cover in agricultural lands through agroforestry practices adapted to context represents a concrete example with great potential to enhance system resilience to climate change. The consumers markets health nexus highlights that food consumption patterns exert overwhelming influence over food systems and human health. The increasing demand for diversified, nutritious, and safer food by consumers would support cleaner production, shorter value chains, diversified markets, and promote green jobs. Public food procurement networks and school feeding programs provide concrete examples that public policy can simultaneously address food and nutrition security, social inclusion, and biodiversity-friendly agriculture by providing strong support to agroecological transitions to sustainable food systems. The education, government, youth employment nexus highlights that transformative change begins with the way we think. Hence, the essential role of education in developing and nurturing holistic thinking underpinning agroecology in order to fuel and sustain the transformative change needed to transition to sustainable food systems. new policies promoting educational curricula that encourage and reward co-creation and sharing of knowledge, while developing integrative and system thinking skills, should be critical to face the increasing complexities of our interconnected world, and also promote youth employment. Innovative youth employment models where school graduates receive official titles to municipal land, plus an installation package to engage in agroecological farming is a concrete example which has shown potential to slow down youth migration rates from rural areas. The 10 Elements framework recognizes that transformative change could be taking place simultaneously through many routes at multiple locations, starting from different baseline conditions and progressing at different rates. The diversity of trajectory options highlights its flexibility for adapting actions to local, national, and global demands. This suggests that the pace of transformative change towards desired sustainability outcomes could possibly be faster than anticipated, and hence hold greater prospects to achieving the SDGs by 2030. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you. Thanks for this excellent summary and of all the benefits we have if we go in the direction of agroecology approaches. And maybe to point out two things, you said food system transformation begins with a change of thinking. And I think that's exactly what we also would like to bring in this discussion here, is really a change of thinking, how we produce and what we eat every day. And in this context also, just to point out, I think the overall education is getting more and more important. And it's not only in the global south, but also in the global north, that children and youth need to know what are they eating, what do they have every day on their plate, and where does it come from and how is it produced. So just to emphasize also, these educational approaches are very, very important from youth up to the farmers. Let me go, and we still have a little bit time for a second round of questions, and maybe back to Tosi again, and more also on the global perspective. Tosi, in your new role as vice chair of the action track at Nature Positive Production, and looking at on your ongoing role as negotiator for the climate negotiations, my question is, do you have any ideas what should be done between now and the Food Summit and the Climate Summit at the end of next year, that we get more into joint approaches? So any ideas on that would be very much appreciated.
Thank you very much, Martina. Of course, we need to be cognizant of the fact that we are facing extraordinary circumstances. This pandemic, which has put us in some special mode of work, but there are still things that I believe we can try to do. We can try to continue to push for food security, try to push for reduction of food loss and food waste. And as I said earlier, climate change has been a major threat to resilience as regards the whole food supply chain. I think that we can look at what the IPCC will be doing, because I always say that when we engage in climate change discussions, sometimes it makes us very emotional, and we need to have tools which are objective. One is the rule of law, the other one is what science tells us. And I think we need to look at what the IPCC special report, which is being prepared, will be able to tell us. And I think it's going to be a message that we will deliver during the Food Summit, which will be a message which is objective, which is insightful and informative. That is something that I can certainly think of. But I also hope that by next year, we'll be able to make more strides in the discussions, especially as regards to Coronavia, process work under the FOC, because that work, I think, can help us create more alignment when it comes to NDCs, when it comes to national adaptation plans, so that we can have more tools that allow us to address this issue, food security and climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Tosi. And I would like to give this question also to Focus and Edmundo, and just a short answer. So Focus, you mentioned we are still thinking in silos. We have the 3 big summits next year. This is the Biodiversity Summit, the Climate Summit, and the Food Summit. And we are running a little bit, we have still some few minutes, but just what do you think, how could we overcome this kind of silo thinking at a global level and at a national level? And the same also to Edmundo after that, from your perspective, being more deeply involved in the agroecology 10 elements. Focus, over to you.
Yeah, I think actually it's interesting. I think you need more integration the lower down the scale levels that you go. So it's fine to have 3 different conventions at an international level that focus on, you know, CBD, UNF, CCC, and biodiversity. But we, and interestingly, we don't have the same commitment in relation to water at that sort of level, and that I think is going to be critical in relation to sustainable food systems, and that may be something that we need to be thinking about. But I think the integration really needs to happen as you move down the implementation. So once you're looking at how are things going to be done nationally, it's really problematic if you don't have an integration across sectoral integration in the way in which government policy is focusing, because otherwise you end up with this situation where policies are pulling things in different ways. One policy, gives an incentive for one thing, another one, for another. So if that isn't joined up, then the chances of achieving things on the ground are quite low. Now, as you get down through the subnational and down to the local level, the integration becomes pragmatically more and more important, because the decisions that are being made are increasingly made by somebody who isn't in a silo. So if you get right down to a farmer doesn't separate these things out. They're actually trying to make decisions about how to use land on a particular plot at a particular time, and they have to integrate everything. And so the challenge is getting that integration at the subnational and local landscape levels. And I think that the real key that we're missing, that is this missing middle part, that's where things are falling down at local landscape scales. And if we don't get policy instruments and policy structures and social capital at that level, then it's going to be very difficult for agroecology to have traction in food systems.
Thank you. And Edmundo, maybe a very short final input, and then we hand over back to FAO. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the disconnection between food production and consumption limits the capacity for alignment of single actors and collective actions towards positive economic, environmental, and social impacts. This is basically that missing middle that Fergus just noted. So embracing a multiple coordinated goals and holistic actions are needed. So it's very critical to embrace a holistic framework to guide transitions towards sustainable food systems. Thank you.
Thank you. So thanks a lot to this really very important, very valuable discussion. Thanks to Tosi, thanks to Fergus, and thanks to Edmundo. I would like now to hand back to Marlina for the closing of this session, and thanks for all your participation and input.
Thank you so much to Martina and to our panelists once again for the discussion. So our session is now coming to an end, and I would like to quickly invite my colleague Marcel Bernoux, who's a Senior Natural Resources Officer at FAO, to provide some concluding remarks. So Marcel, you have the floor for a few minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Melina. Thank you all. Can you hear me well?
Perfectly.
Okay, so we are close to the end, and I will not summarize in a few minutes all the richness of the different debate we had. But basically, perhaps if I can focus only on three aspects. One is resilience, and you can see my background. It was at the occasions of the World Food Day that remember us that all action are our future, and we need to grow, nourish, and to have a sustain all together. And this is a call for a more resilient and robust agri-food system on a global solidarity. So resilience is key. And even more than 2 days, we have 2 million of people suffering from moderate to severe food insecurity. And with the COVID pandemic, we might have more 130 million of people falling into food severe insecurity. So we need really to have a resilient system. The other point that I was really liking is a different presentation on the example from India and Thailand. It's complexity. We can address complexity. We can implement complex solutions that we need to cope with the complex problem we are facing. So complexity was always seen as something as a barrier for action. The world is always looking to simplify the difficulties and the complexity of the problem and to pinpoint some just simple solution. No, we are now realizing that we need to cope with that complexity and to implement complex solutions dealing on the three pillars of the sustainable development: economic, social, and environment. And this brings me to the last point that was really said a lot, breaking silo. Yes, this is the only way we have to address that complexity. And for me, we have a lot of opportunities in front of us. We have all the tools that we need to break the silo. We have the SDG and the Decade of Action for Agenda 2030 that was built in a way that allows us to really implement solutions addressing all the different sustainable development goals all together. On the climate convention that is mostly on environment and mostly under the lead of environment, we have now a track of negotiation on agriculture. So we have here an opportunity. This is a Corneva joint work on agriculture, and we are here an opportunity to better link two different communities for a unique goal. And finally, we have NDC. NDC, I should remember, that is nationally. So basically, it's from the country. So the country have really all the freedom to break the silo on their nationally determined contribution. So, but for that, we need perhaps more advocacy. And so breaking the silo to address the complexity for a more resilient food system. This is what I will keep as a key message of today. Thank you to all the panelists, all the participants that also raised a lot of very interesting questions. Thank you for Melina and Martina for leading us in that really rich exchange. And I just remember that we have, for those that have time, that want to exchange more, we will have another session this afternoon. So thank you so much to all.
Thank you so much, Marcel, for closing the session. So yes, once again, thanks so much for all our speakers, panelists, and participants for taking the time to participate in this online forum and exchanging your ideas about such an important topic. We do know that transforming our food systems through more sustainable and climate resilient practices, including agroecological practices, can only come as the result of a collective effort. So I'm really glad to see that from the results of the poll we ran in the beginning of our session, we were able to bring together today people from all sectors and all regions of the world to discuss opportunities for transformative action.
I guess we lose Melina.
Can you still hear me?
Okay, Melina, you are back. Okay, please.
I'm so sorry. Okay, so I will just close quickly. Basically, just wanted to thank everyone one last time, and also let you know that we will be sharing a brief report as well as the recording of the session in the next weeks. So our third and last session also of this series will be held next month, so please stay tuned. And before leaving the meeting, I invite participants to provide their feedback on the session by just answering a few questions that will show up on your screen now. And from the Secretariat of the Thematic Working Group on Agriculture, Food Security and Land Use at FAO, I look forward to continuing discussions with all of you in the coming months. So thank you once again and take care.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye to all.